Let's see if it works. Let's assume we're on.
Here we go.
I assume we'll see ourselves up there in a second. Hopefully this is going to work.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, can anyone hear us yet?
We think we just started the stream.
We pushed the button. We don't know if it worked yet.
Hello, Internet. Are you there?
We see Chris and Cherie are in the house.
And John and Iggy. Hello, guys.
Can anybody hear us? Oh,
great.
oh, awesome, awesome.
Loud and clear. Excellent.
Terrific.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome. Excellent.
We still have a little bit of time left here before we're technically live.
Hi, everybody. So good to see you all. That's great.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday, and we'll wait just a minute to get going, so give everybody a chance to come in. Good to see you too, Ian. We're going to try and keep this one nice and relaxed. We're here among friends, and we feel that way. We hope you do too. And got quite a bit to cover. We've tried to make this something more than just sitting in front of the camera. We've been working on this for the last couple of days, so hopefully it'll hopefully all our technology here is going to work. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, with our luck, we're going to crash and burn.
Yeah, well, it's either going to be fabulous or crash and burn. We have no idea which.
There's no in between.
Also, while we're just waiting a minute or two for everybody to get here, we'll let you know that we got a nice surprise in the mail that we hope you'll all appreciate on Friday. So we figured while we're killing a minute or two just to let people get here.
This is the vamping phase.
This is the vamping phase. Those of you who have been around a while might know that we were on the Roadmaster cover on last year. And so we got a surprise package in the mail on Friday. Those of you who aren't on Instagram haven't seen this yet, but we made it 2 years in a row. So we think we did better than last year's picture. This was in the Canadian Rockies. So
apparently Roadmaster has no one else sending them photos.
Well, that's what we found out. Our goal was to get another picture inside the brochure, and we found out from them that the reason they put us on the cover is because they have such a terrible time getting photos, which we didn't know. So now we're going to go for 3 in a row next year.
The pressure's on.
Yeah. So I see Kenny and Sabrina of Moving Forward are here, and Running with the Lions. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
The Locks are here. Debbie, Greg, Denny. Great to see you all here. Thank you.
And thank you for the vote of confidence from the Locks about if anyone could get it to work, it's us guys. And Technomadia. Yeah, Chris and Cherie.
And Chris and Cherie are here, so we are going to have to be on our tech game big time.
Pressure is on.
Yeah. So we're going to try and keep this a little relaxed. Like I said, this is a small, intimate group of our closest friends, and we don't want to make this like some formal TV appearance kind of thing, and we're real relaxed about this and hope that's okay. What we're going to do... Hiya, Don. What we're going to do is we're going to start off, as we said, referring to the questions and great comments that were submitted in advance, and afterwards we will take questions live here. But there were 3 main topics we're going to hit first, and we've prepared some multimedia stuff here to try and answer them.
We gave you guys homework, and we had homework, so I think that's fair.
Did we ever? And so what we'll do is, unlike the last time we were on, the live we did on YouTube only had so many people on. It was just overwhelming. There were 250 people in the room, and the chat was going by so fast. So what we'd like to do this time, to make it a little more personal and intimate, is for us to be able to pay attention to the chat a little bit more while we're going. So I apologize if we keep looking down to see.
It's like mission control here right now. You would think we were launching a rocket into space with all the screens. And
as a matter of fact, if things look just normal, like just us sitting here.
Yeah, this frame right here just looks like it's 2 guys sitting in an RV.
Those of you who get our behind-the-scenes videos, as soon as we're finished here, we are going to make a behind-the-scenes video to show what is going on here.
Assuming we don't have a camera that's not in use at the moment.
It's like they're all sitting here all around us. It's hysterical, but we'll have that in a little behind-the-scenes video later tonight, which we'll try and get out within the next day or two. anyway, what we'd like to do, if we can, is get right into a couple of basics on what we're going to cover. We think we have some really good things to cover today. And while we'll address the questions that we got already first, what we'll do is after each one, we'll stop and take questions on those. If you want to follow up or comment on them, we'll watch the chat and we'll go back. If we missed your comment, don't worry. We'll roll the chat. You can roll that back, right?
I can. I think I can.
Try that. Make sure you can. Yeah, you can.
Famous last words.
So we can roll the chat back. And what we'll do is we'll make sure that any questions you had pertinent to what we're talking about now get addressed. So we can.
And we apologize if we miss them in the stream as we are going along, but we will at the end try and go back through it all and see if there was anything that we missed.
Great. And we'll hang here as long as you want us to, as long as we're comfortable. So let's start off with a couple of basics. First off, we apologize in advance that much of what we're going to talk about will focus more heavily on motorhomes and less on towables.
Sort of what we know.
We are not in any way motorhome snobs. We just happen to own one, and I happen to have more experience with them. I have tractor-trailer driving experience, but it was a very long time ago, and it was only for part of 1 year, and I'm not nearly as experienced with tractor-trailers as I am with motor coaches. So my expertise primarily comes with that. That said, I have owned boats. When I was younger, I owned boats the whole time I was a kid, and I towed trailers, and I have experience driving trailers, and I understand them. But I'd find it questionable that I could provide deep, intricate knowledge that would go beyond what you already know as a travel trailer owner, unless you've just bought one. But if you have questions about it, we'll do our best to answer those.
Absolutely.
So why don't we start right in? And I hope it's okay if we name the people who submitted these questions, and maybe they can let us know if they're here. Stuart, I'm not sure if you're here, but the very first question came in from Stuart. And he said, how about a discussion regarding mountain driving in hot weather and the need for downshifting and keeping the RPMs up to keep the engine cool?
And so, Stuart was not the only one who asked that question.
Right.
We got more.
We heard from Debbie also. And
she was talking about driving through the Rockies in their coach, and they had a difficult time learning that they had to manually downshift, slow down, and make sure they were going slower up the hill in order to keep their diesel in their original RV from overheating. And then also added that in their newer coach, they haven't had nearly as much of a problem with the mountains. So maybe Allison has improved their transmission from almost 20 years ago, was their question. So, hi, Debbie. Glad to see you here. I see Debbie C., 54.
Hi, Debbie.
Thank you, Stuart and Debbie, for those questions. So, yeah, again, in our coach, we have not had we've been up and down the mountains all throughout the west and even through the Blue Ridge Mountains out east and everything. And in this RV, we have never had an issue with overheating going up the hill, up the mountains. Now, we do tend to follow sort of a more moderate temperate climate, so we're not generally doing that in high temperatures either. But actually, both of you sort of had the exact advice, which is you need to keep your, and particularly in a diesel pusher, you need to keep your RPMs up a little higher in order to keep the water pump and everything circulating coolant through the radiator fast enough in order to keep the engine cool. So going up the mountain, you may need to be going slower and manually downshift into a lower gear in order to keep the revolutions up. You're not going to go up the mountain as fast, but you're not going to have a problem with overheating. So keeping an eye on that temp gauge while you're climbing the mountain will be a good indicator that if it is you are seeing it begin to climb, you may need to manually downshift your transmission in order to get the revs up and get that temperature down.
Now, one of the tips that we picked up on was that you said it was your older RV, Debbie, that you were having that problem with, and the newer one was not such a problem with. And that probably has a fair amount to do with why we haven't had a problem. We've owned 2 diesel motorhomes. They were both purchased brand new. And even though this one is 13 years old.
You don't age it anymore.
We've been on the road for 15 years, but this one's 13 years old. We have a side radiator, which could help with that. I'm not sure if your original one was a rear radiator, but that can have an effect.
Right. So particularly with the rear radiators, so the little bit of oil spray that comes out from the, what they call it, the slobber tube for a good reason, often on a rear radiator gets sucked into the fan and blown into the radiator. And then that oil is just gunky that catches a lot of dust and dirt and debris and begins to clog up the radiator so it doesn't perform as well. And then when you're in that situation, high temperatures and a steep climb, your RV's radiator certainly cannot keep up with the demand. So I see that you're talking about having had a rear radiator on both your previous and your current rear. So that's definitely an issue that you want to keep, be aware of. We actually did a modification on our RV. I think we have a little short video about it on the RV Geeks channel about putting a little bottle over that slobber tube in order to catch that oil spray so that it doesn't end up blowing into your radiator. And that's a really simple DIY type of thing to help stop that.
Right. We did it to keep oil off our car because we have a side radiator. But in your case, you'll want to put that on there to keep that oil out of the radiator because clogging that up over time is not helping.
Yeah, no, and I see the locks are saying that you notice if you saw the temperature going up, you'd use the water pump to spritz a fine mist onto the radiator in order to cool it down, and that working great. That's absolutely, if you're in a situation where your temperature is getting up over 220, 230 on your temperature gauge, and you've got a spot to pull over and do that, not a bad idea. Again, though, you want to make sure that you put your high idle on. Don't shut the engine down.
Right. When you come to a stop, if you shut the engine down right away, you're not helping. You want to keep the coolant circulating.
Correct.
Turn the fast idle on. Like in ours, for example, that brings us up to 1,000 RPMs. Keep the engine running to cool it. It seems counterintuitive. You think shut it down if it's hot, but keep it running unless it's already overheating and spewing coolant out. But
yeah,
if it's
that would be a different issue.
That's a different issue. If it's showing hot, but it hasn't actually overheated yet, keep it running. And one other thing you can do, if you absolutely need to, and I have not tried this in a motorhome because, again, ours has not overheated, but this works in a car, and that is to turn the heat on and turn the fan on and blow the heat off the engine. Now, of course, you're going to bake yourself inside the RV if you need to do that. In a car, you can just roll all the windows down and turn the heat on, and I have done this before in cars that have been overheating, is to turn the heat on full in the middle of summer and roast to pull that heat off the engine.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't know if you want to give any credence to what the locks are saying here because they busted me already by asking if the tractor trailers I used to drive were horse-drawn. Thanks very much. No, they weren't. So
they were motorized.
We'll let that go since you made some nice comments here.
But I see that you said that you would turn the water pump on while he was driving. I'm assuming you must have set up some kind of a hose situation to actually spray water over it. That was actually pretty clever.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, you've redeemed yourself from the horse-drawn tractor trailer comment.
And another couple of things we saw, we were doing a little bit of research on this. When people who had coaches that were having problems when climbing mountains and having that issue, another thing to keep in mind is on your transmission, you may want to switch it out of eco mode.
Oh,
so
we can
here.
show that. Matter of fact, this is a very typical, it's part of an Allison transmission controller there. We're going to talk about one other thing here in this image.
So you see that mode button in that upper right-hand corner, there's actually a little LED, and it says economy next to it. When you push the mode button and that LED, that little light comes on, that means you've put it in economy mode, and they don't make it very clear that economy means actually more fuel-friendly in theory. It changes the shift points on the transmission,
gets it to
shift
sooner.
Encourage it to shift sooner, to get you into higher gears faster.
Which is the opposite of what you want to do if you're heating up.
Correct. So you may want to turn the mode off of economy in order to get you back to a regular mode. And then again, you may have to manually use the plus and minus buttons to shift up or down as needed in order to get rid of that issue. So.
And I see Hans has a suggestion about getting to know your high and low RPM points for each gear, which is a very good idea.
Yeah.
In a diesel particularly, it's actually a very narrow range. It's not like with a gas engine that could rev up to 4,000 or 5,000 RPMs. Diesel engines don't go that high.
No.
When we're cruising down the highway at 55 miles an hour, we're only turning about 1,500 RPM. So they are lower RPM engines. It's a different animal than a gas engine. And again, I apologize, we don't have experience with a gas engine in a motorhome.
And I see Chris and Sherry saying that those misting systems are a common mod for old diesel pushers, and I would imagine particularly for anybody doing mountain driving.
And Chris and Sherry have been everywhere, and they have an older diesel with
Does
their
Zephyr
beautiful...
have a misting system?
I'd be curious about that, if you guys don't mind mentioning whether Zephyr has misting. That would be very high-tech.
It'd be very Palm Springs, because we've been at restaurants that have misting systems, and I got to say that was very helpful for keeping cool in the middle of the desert.
Right. So the biggest thing about hills that we're familiar with and that we've experienced is not going up, but going down. And we wanted to mention this in the course of this topic for a second, and that is about engine brakes and exhaust brakes. And I see, by the way, that Chris and Cherie said they don't, but a lot of other 4106s have one. I think yours is a 61 GMC, if I remember, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. So they've got a real classic out there. But as far as going downhill, so there is an engine brake and there's an exhaust brake. Maybe you can show that again.
Yeah, again.
So if you look at this image right here, over on the right, to the right of our transmission controller, you can see it says engine brake. And we have high, off, and low. Now on our Bounder, our first RV, we just had on and off, and it was
an exhaust
brake. And I will tell you what happened with that. We had one experience that was white knuckle. And remember, this is me with many, many years of driving motor coaches and transit buses for a living. I had not driven across the Tioga Pass in one of those before. And our very first summer on the road in 2003, we came up out of Yosemite Valley and crossed the Tioga Pass on the eastern exit of the park at about 10,000 feet. And if any of you have ever been there, you know that goes straight down to Mono Lake.
That's a steep one.
When I say straight down, I mean straight down. So we were coming down the hill, and we started to smell the brakes a bit, which is a bad sign. You know that you're getting too heavy on the brakes if you start to smell them. And we actually had to pull off and stop and have lunch for half an hour to let them cool down, because I was unable to maintain our speed with only an exhaust brake.
Yeah, and again, part of that actually was because you had an engine brake on the buses you had driven, which was much more effective than the exhaust brake we had on the Bounder. And for all we know, there was something wrong with that exhaust brake, because it was not very effective.
Right. So, and I see, Debbie, you were just talking about Tioga Pass.
Yeah, for us, down has
definitely
always been more of an issue than going up.
And I also see that Chris and Cherie mentioned that their buses overheated quite a bit. So, and fun in quotes, not exactly.
Not exactly fun.
So here's the way you want to handle your brakes. So real quickly, if you've got what we have, which you can see right here, or that way, the engine brake high and low, I will tell you how powerful it is and how much authority it's got. We almost never use high. We can come down off almost any mountain with it in low, and I can ride all the way down the mountain and never touch the brake. Only when it gets to be about a 16, 18%, really steep, frightening grades do I have to resort to high. And if I do...
And that's usually in combination with manually downshifting the transmission?
It's actually not.
Okay.
I never.
I don't know what he's doing over in that seat.
I almost never touch the manual controls on the transmission to downshift, because the engine brake does it for you. Right. And it actually uses, we don't have to get into the technical way it works, but it has a tremendous amount more authority. It uses the engine compression itself to slow you down. And literally, we could be coming down like Tioga Pass and turn that on high, and without touching the brake, it will slow us down aggressively as if we're stepping on the brake. You think you are on the brakes, all the way to the point where it will reach its lowest speed at which it works when it will disengage. And that's about 15 miles per hour.
Yeah, it's pretty slow.
So let's suppose, the back pressure.
Yeah, well, so actually, and Ian asked the question about the difference between an engine brake and an exhaust brake. An exhaust brake is the sort of the first level of engine braking. Diesel engines are not like gas engines. When you let off the gas on a diesel engine, there is very little resistance that the engine is providing to the wheels spinning. So it's not like in a car where when you let up off the gas, the car starts to slow down because the engine is actually resisting the wheels turning.
It's the cylinders, actually, the compression of the engine that's actually doing the slowing down.
So diesel engines don't operate that way. So the first level of sort of braking power you can get is an exhaust brake. And what that does is it actually closes off a valve and uses the exhaust gas from the engine itself to put back pressure on the engine in order to resist the pistons moving, so that it slows the wheels from turning.
It is not that effective.
They say that exhaust brakes are only about 60 to 80% as effective as an engine brake.
And my experience is I doubt that number.
Yeah, right. So an engine brake works by changing the valve release timing in order to actually use the pressure of the gases in the cylinders to resist the turning of the wheels. So now that's why there's a high and a low. Our engine is a 6-cylinder engine, so in low it only does that on 3 of the cylinders, and in high it uses all 6 in order to add resistance.
It's remarkably effective. And Debbie, I see you normally manually downshift to go slow, and you're doing the right thing. And I'm going to give you the tip. Also, you mentioned the engine brake only works up to a certain speed. It actually works. The way ours works is that if I engage the engine brake above a certain speed, it won't slow us down if it's too steep, unless if I have it in low and I start braking to bring us down to a certain speed, the transmission will downshift and then aggressively slow us down. So here's the big trick, engine brake or not. If you are going down a mountain and it is steep, here's the old school way of using the brakes. Years ago, when I drove a truck, years ago, the method was that you should keep light pressure on the service brake, the foot brake, all the way down the mountain, just to lightly keep pressure on the brake. That has long since been superseded by a far superior method, because that method is not good. You can smoke the brakes.
They glaze over, right?
You can overheat and glaze the brakes, and should you lose the brakes, you're not going to stop unless you have a powerful engine brake. So the correct way to slow yourself down on a mountain, if you don't have an engine brake to do the job for you and you're starting to pick up some speed, is to downshift the transmission, of course. But for the brake usage, what you want to do is step firmly down on the brake. Firmly and aggressively. Slow yourself very rapidly. I'm not talking about flooring it. Or
don't throw people through the windshield.
Don't want someone to rear end you. But what you want to do, let's say you're picking up speed and you're doing about 50 and you want to get down to 25 or 30. Firmly apply the brakes and get yourself immediately down to 30 or 20 miles an hour, whatever you need to get down to. And then let go of the brake.
And that will actually let your transmission downshift into a lower gear, which will increase the resistance to rolling, so it'll help slow you down.
And it's also going to allow the brakes to avoid heating up by having long continuous use and now begin to cool off again. And the way you would come down a hill in an emergency where your transmission wasn't holding is to firmly apply the brakes to get you slower than you want to be, and then let go to let them cool. And before you get too much speed again, firmly apply them again, let off again, and cycle that way. And what you really want to be doing when that happens, if you're in that situation, you want to be looking for a place to pull safely off the road. But until that happens, cycle hard on, lift off, and do that only until you can get to the safe spot.
And there are sort of 2 other pieces of advice. One, which is never go down a hill any faster than you could go up it.
Great point.
So if a hill is really steep, if a mountain's, you're talking 10% grade, and you can only go up it at 25 or 30 miles an hour, that's what you should be targeting for going back down the other side, because otherwise you're going to risk outrunning the ability of your engine and your brakes and your exhaust brake to be able to slow you down. And the second thing is that they talk about a term called equilibrium, and that going down a hill, you want to have your transmission, down in a low enough gear and your exhaust brake or your engine brake at a level that maintains your speed on the grade.
And won't allow you to accelerate.
Correct. So then that way you are not using your brakes to keep yourself from picking up speed or from overspeeding. You're letting the resistance of the engine and the transmission do all the work for you. And then that way your braking is for the situations where if you do have to pull off the side of the road and stop, you can do so. So obviously you can get into situations where you didn't expect it to be that steep, and so you're a little faster than you want. Always start off slower than you think you should be going, because it's better that the traffic should have to go around you than you should have to use one of those emergency runoffs.
Really. And Joy Litchfield, I see that you did mention that the rule of thumb for braking going downhill is 5 seconds of braking, 5 seconds off. And that's good. And again, firm braking.
Not just
and then
coasting
Don't
with
just
riding
put a little on. You want to reduce your speed if you're in that situation, not just maintain. Also, John Tretland mentioned high versus low, and he said 98% of the time he uses low, and wants to know if it's common for all engine brakes or is Newmar's very good. Now, John happens to have a King Air, a Newmar King Air, which is their top-of-the-line coach. He's got a beautiful rig, and I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to guess on that one. I'm going to make an educated guess that it's not just Newmar, because that system isn't made by Newmar.
No, but there's a lot of factors that go into it. So you've got the gearing ratio on the transmission, and the RV manufacturers, order their specific gearing from Spartan and Freightliner the way they want it.
But those systems do come from Cummins and Allison, and they probably are used in other
But there
vehicles.
can be variability across brands based off of the gearing ratio on the transmissions, how they have it programmed. So when you have the exhaust brake or the engine brake turned on, the engine computer can be tied into the transmission computer so that when the engine brake engages, it should pre-select a lower gear on the transmission so that the transmission is aiding in trying to slow you down. And not all manufacturers have them programmed that way. So there can be variability. Any of the bigger engines with a 2-stage or even a 3-stage exhaust brake.
So let me get just a couple of other comments here and then move on to our next topic. I saw that Leisure Time Locks, was it, who mentioned, somebody I just saw mentioned about noise when braking.
Oh, yeah, the locks, yep.
Right. Our engine brake doesn't make any noticeable noise.
That's an unmuffled engine brake usually.
Those are real common, like on dump trucks and other straight trucks. That is not a problem with an RV. It is nothing that would bother anybody. It's no louder than the engine.
No.
Okay.
And if yours is particularly loud, it is possible that you may have a leak either in your turbocharger or in your exhaust plumbing, so that may need to actually be looked at. But yeah, ours is not particularly loud. They're talking about the unmuffled ones on big trucks.
Right. Also, I like the comment from Greg. You can go down too slow as often as you want, and you can only go down too fast once. Thank you, Greg.
Yes.
Discretion is the better part of valor.
Absolutely true.
And Eggy was on some 17-degree downslopes and found that almost stopping at the top before heading down works well. And then, of course, controlling your speed on the way down.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and engine Jake or
Chris and Sharia. So yes, yeah. And Jake Brake is a brand. I think it's an exhaust brake.
It's actually, that's short for Jacobs Brake.
Yeah, right.
And that is a brand.
And it's a brand of exhaust brake, as far as I understand, not a true engine brake. But the reference to computers? Question mark.
That's good. I like
analog
that.
buses are out of the mix. It's amazing that your bus is analog, but you guys are so techie digital.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on braking and hills here. I hope we covered that good. And
yeah, thank you for all the input.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the input. We wanted this to be an interactive thing. We are not the sole proprietors of knowledge here, so we're so happy that others here have input as well. Thank you. So let's move on to another topic. Sal asked, he said that this may be a topic for an entire video, but can we talk a little bit about backing into a spot? So first off, Sal, this is indeed a topic for an entire video, but nonetheless...
Did that stop us?
Did not stop us. And Sal, if you're here, say hello. I'm not sure if we saw you here yet in the chat room, but...
And if you're not here, then hi, Sal, in the replay.
So, Sal, we want to thank you for bringing that up, and we have a little multimedia thing here. If it works, let's see. It's up to my tech cohort here to see what we've got. So we have a little sample campground here.
I think we've stayed there.
We stayed at that campground before. I think we've seen some of you there.
I recognize those trees.
So what this is maybe your typical campsite in a treed campground, and we are going to bring the RV into the campground. And
fancy.
Thank you, Chris and Cherie.
Yeah.
So
ooh, animation.
So we want to mention a few things about how we're going to approach this. So first off, notice that we're pulling in from the right-hand side here, so we're going to be backing into a space on our right first. So that we're going to cover backing to the right first.
And just in advance, no, Chris and Cherie, we did not do an animation of pulling forward into the space so that you are backwards in it in order to get better privacy, but we love that trick.
We know that's one of your favorite tricks, and we like that handy too. So let's get some controls up here. There we go. And thank you. And what we're going to do is we're going to drive forward, and the first step to approaching a site is, see, I screwed up already. Hold on. There we go. The first step to approaching, I got fat fingers, to approaching the site is to pull up to this point and stop. And the reason you're doing that is real simple. You want to take a look down that site from the driver's seat and do what I call make a visual inspection and take a mental picture of what's back there. So I drove buses long before there were backup cameras. There was no way that I could see behind me, and I did not have anyone with me as a spotter. I was simply a tour bus driver out by myself.
I wasn't born yet.
Just for the record, we're only 10 years apart, so I don't... So the reason you want to pull up here, look down into that site, see what's there. Did somebody leave a picnic table sitting out in the site? Are there kids running around back here, playing games back here? Is there anything else in the way? Is there a tree back here at the back of the site that maybe you'll back into? Take a mental picture and see what's back there.
And also what are near the corners near the front of the site. So up here and up here, are there going to be issues with things that you could be off tracking over or into kind of thing?
Correct. So that's our first position. Now the second thing you're going to do, after you've taken your mental picture down there, you're going to move up to this point here. The first time you ever come up to a site when you're driving, yes, you should absolutely use your partner as your spotter. You want to use everything that's available to you. But for the moment, we're going to talk about positioning. So what we're doing here is the goal is to pull up until your rear axle is lined up with the center of the site. And you can see, if you draw a line right across that rear axle, well, if you draw a straight one anyway.
It's hard with your finger.
I know. We line up with the center of the site. And that is a good starting point. And that's not going to be perfect for every rig. Some of it depends on how long the rig is, how sharp the wheel cut is. If you saw our video, if you did your homework in advance and you saw our video about off-tracking, you know that there is something called wheel cut and wheelbase that are going to affect this. And there's also something else. You'll notice that we did not pull up right up to the curb. You can see that all along this side here, in here, we are not against the curb. We've left about 3 feet of space between ourselves and the curb. And the reason we've done that is because of rear overhang. Our front wheels are going to... This is going to be our next move, of course, is to cut out this way. And what's going to happen? Our pivot point, which is right here in between the axles, is going to pivot, and the rear is going to go this way because that's our rear overhang swing. Now, in this case, because there's not really anything over here in this area, this isn't a big danger usually. But if there were, say, a tree right here or a garbage can.
And if you were too close to that curb.
And if you were very close to it, you could easily rear overhang, swing your rear overhang into the side. So start off with trying to align your rear wheels with the center of the site. Now, how do you know when your rear wheels are lined up with the center of the site? How did I know that?
Because your travel partner was in the space waving their arms wildly, yelling into the walkie-talkie.
Your travel partner is probably standing maybe over here.
What are you doing? Stop! The wheels aren't lined up.
And they're going to look and they're going to see, and they're going to get their walkie-talkie out and they're going to say, stop.
Props. Look, props.
We have props. So that is how you're going to know. Now, how about when you've been driving a bus for as long as I have? I will tell you now, it is, to this day, I cannot pull forward and just using my mirror to look back in that direction, I can only get it accurate to within a couple of feet. It's almost impossible to perfectly, precisely place that tire. After a while, you'll get the feel for what's approximately right.
But it's also not rocket science, so you don't need to be obsessing over every millimeter.
Correct. So now what we're going to do, we've got ourselves positioned. We're going to swing out to the left, crank the wheel out like that. We're going to put it in reverse, of course.
And wait, I have one little tidbit to chime in here with.
Okay.
Why is it that we were doing all of this? What's the most important factor in maneuvering the RV?
The single most important thing, and I'm glad John reminded me about this, because
I hear his voice in my head telling me this every time I'm behind the wheel.
The most important thing to keep in mind when you're maneuvering, particularly when you're backing up, but even when you're going forward, is the placement of the rear axle. The rear axle. And why is it so important to position the rear axle? It's real simple. You can't steer it. You can't turn it. Once it's in place, that's where it is. The front wheels you can turn and make adjustments, but when that axle is positioned, you can't slide it sideways and you can't move it. So it's the positioning of the rear wheels that's important. And You want the rear wheels, when you came up to this site, you want the rear wheels to go in here. So why would you drive up down this part of the road? You want to drive up down this part of the road over here. Right. That's why we did that.
Give yourself room to swing.
And you're going to see that when we go in on the other side. So let's.
And of course, Chris and Cherie said, but there's always a tree or rock in the front of the coach.
Okay,
right there.
So
that's true.
That's a good point. And there's something called reverse off tracking. And over here in front of the RV, right up in this front corner here, we have to be aware that when we cut our wheel back to the right now to back in, we have to be right there.
That little bit of overhang.
Cognizant of what's there. Is it just grass? Is there a wall or a tree there? So great point.
Now, luckily, it's in your closest field of view because it's closer right up to where you're sitting.
You're sitting right there. Your left side is your strong side, so you can look right outside there and see what's happening. So that is one advantage to backing up on the right side.
And the Locks asked, where should your spotter be standing? There's not specifically one spot. So obviously, in this situation, if we were dealing with a rock in this area and near the front of the RV or on the opposite side, you may want your spotter to come around in order to watch that spot as you're beginning to make the turn. You may also want someone to be here looking to make sure if there's branches or anything that you're not impacting those.
However, I will tell you that here, I can see this spot right here more clearly by taking my electric side view flat mirror and aiming it down. I can see within about an inch or two how close this tire is going to come to this curb. But up here, if I have something right here and I'm backing up with my steering wheels cut to the right, it's going to be challenging to see out there unless I lean out the window. And
not to mention it's not the area you're focusing on because
well,
you're backing up.
But you should be focusing on it. And if you have a window you can lean out, great. If you don't have a window you can lean out because it's not big enough, you need to have a spotter come around the front. And if you need to stop and have your spotter walk around and check different spots, do that.
Right. And so Greg also mentioned the spotter needs to stay visible in the mirrors. And yes, I always make sure when I'm out there that I try to move myself so that I can see a mirror. Because if I can see the mirror, then Peter can see me. But of course, we also have the walkie-talkies, which help a lot. And Debbie asked about, are you cutting the wheel over all the way before the turn?
So Debbie, you're talking about when we came up to the point we're at now, I assume, when we pulled into this position?
Or even when you're turning to go now back up into the space.
The wheel, I would cut the wheel all the way out unless there's a reason not to. Mm-hmm. So a reason not to might be because you don't have the room to swing out wide enough and you've got to do only a very shallow entry. And that's particularly true if you have an obstacle over in this area here that you cannot get right up to the edge like we've done here. If this was just flat grass over here,
you could swing out over.
You actually have front overhang over here, especially in a diesel pusher. Right here, there's front overhang that sticks out in front of the front wheels. If this area over here is just flat grass with nothing on it, you can stick this overhang right over it with no problem and run your tire right along here and use your front overhang over that grass.
Right. But also, I guess the question, too, could be about whether or not you actually turn the wheel fully before you start moving the coach.
I would recommend that you not turn the steering wheel while you are sitting perfectly still. And the reason for that is it's bad for the tires. So what you should do is turn the wheel quickly, but not while you're sitting perfectly still. So I recommend for newer drivers, there are two correct methods of steering. One is called hand over hand, and the other is called push-pull. Hand over hand is when you pull down on one side of the wheel like you're pulling a rope. And push-pull is when you push with one hand. I got to get on the camera. Push with one hand and pull with the other. I always recommend for newer drivers that push-pull is a much better method for controlling, but it's not as fast as hand over hand, where you can really move the wheel quickly. So go very slowly and move slowly forward, crawling, and don't sit perfectly still while you are turning the wheel, because what you're doing is if you are sitting perfectly still and turning the wheel all the way, you're scrubbing the tires very hard on the pavement, and it's also extra stress on the entire steering system to be doing it. So I would say that I can go from perfectly straight ahead to fully locked over while rolling the RV forward no more than a couple of feet. You're just going to crawl forward and rapidly turn the wheel as you go, but don't sit perfectly still because it's not good. Mm-hmm. And Tecnomatia, Chris and Cherie are also mentioning your power steering pump doesn't need to be doing that while it's sitting still while you have 0 RPMs. It doesn't have as much power. And you can blow things out in that. That's right. So don't put the stress on your system by, I never ever turn the steering wheel while the rig is perfectly stationary. Always move it just slightly. And I hope that answered your question.
And Cheryl's got a good question that you're probably going to get up to next. But what about angled sights? Not all sights are 90 degrees to the road.
We have a slide coming up. Don't
We're
go
gonna get
away.
to that, yeah.
And I know some people here a couple of people had to leave already because they had to go to classes. But I hope they're still here for that one because we're going to get into that next. So let's keep moving along here. We're now going to back into the space. And you notice that our rear wheels just cleared the corner. And there we are, we're into the space. So you're going to use every single tool at your disposal. Your backup camera, your left and right convex and flat mirrors, your electric mirrors. I never had electric mirrors when I was driving a bus. The greatest luxury in the world is to get to a spot like that and motor my right mirror down till it's looking at my right rear tire. I can bring my tire this close to the curb and not hit it because in the convex, you can't see that much detail. But now I bring that thing down. I can maneuver within an inch because of that electric mirror. Yeah, check them out, electric mirrors. Chris and Cherie, I apologize.
We're going to have to
sorry.
do a live chat with you guys where you tell us all about the ways you do this without all this newfangled.
While you're gone on the boat on Why Not, we're going to go and install electric mirrors on Zephyr while you're not there. We already have the key to the storage lot. So let's move on to the next one here. And now we're going to tackle, what do you do if the space is on your left? Well, here's what you do. You're going to be driving down the road from the right side, and you're going to angle across to the left side of the street, right? And you're going to pull up along the left. Now, why do we have to be on the left side of the street? Well, it's exactly like I told you before. These wheels back here, these wheels are going over here. And because you can't steer them, you have to start off by having them as close as possible to this area here. If we start out with those wheels out here by coming down the middle of the road, how are we going to swing our nose out and get any angle? You've got to be way over to the side to position the rear wheels and to leave yourself room to swing. So when you're going to pull in, now, even though you're on the wrong side of the road here, remember, we're talking about you're in a campground. Everybody does this, and it's okay. You're
low traffic zone.
It's a small two-way street. You're going to see people coming the other way. You're not driving on a road in oncoming traffic doing this. Don't ever do this on a regular road. This is strictly a campground. So what we do here is exactly the opposite of what we did on the other side. Everything is a mirror image. We're going to cut our wheels out to the right. And, oh, I'm sorry. I stopped there because I goofed up on that, didn't I?
You did.
I can't go back.
No.
The reason we stopped there
is to look in the sight and get your mental image.
Is to look down the sight. We always stop with the driver's seat looking straight down the sight to take our mental picture.
You drop your spotter off and let them go.
Drop your spotter off, let them get out with the walkie-talkie and get back there. Now we pull up until our tires are straight across from the sight, same as we did the other way. Now we cut the wheel slowly as we move out. Cut ourselves out.
Make sure there's no rocks or trees.
There's There's no rocket science to. Oh yeah, I see. Thomas is saying that the driving instructor told him to turn the wheels while you were perfectly still. I'm going to say this: that guy either doesn't own an RV and doesn't care about yours. It's not good for the tires or the steering system, and it's unnecessary. It really is. The amount of to roll forward for 2 feet as you're turning the wheels puts so much less pressure on your steering system and your tires and takes up almost no additional space to do the maneuver. I would never turn my tires while I'm sitting still.
Well, and with practice, you begin to prep for that kind of thing. So as you were doing the cut across, the last thing you would do would be to turn your wheels the other way as you were still rolling before you put it in reverse to come back. So,
right. So now we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to
maybe he works for Goodyear. You never know.
That could be. Yeah, Thomas, that's correct.
We do not.
I don't mean to contradict somebody, but I'm doing it. So we've gotten ourselves into the sight, and it is actually easier to back in on the left than to back in on the right. What we just did is easier. Anybody know why? Any hands? John knows why.
I'm not going to tell you.
It's because the left side is our strong side. Because we sit on that side and we sit very close to the left-hand mirror, we can see out the window, stick our head out the window. We have a much better visibility on the left
Debbie
side.
got it.
Right.
Driver can see better.
The driver's side is your strong side. The other side is your weak side, and you cannot see as well. There's a much bigger blind area on the right, and being so far, you're sitting about 9 or 10 feet away from that mirror out on that arm, 8 feet away from that mirror. And this one, you're only sitting about 3 feet away from that. That makes a big difference. Okay? So, I got to undo that. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Sorry we're taking so long to get these. We still have a lot to cover. All right. So, someone asked about angled sights. How's this for...
And actually, the Lions asked what hand signals do you use to estimate how much distance is left when backing.
Okay, there's a couple of ways to do it.
Yeah, and a lot of those classes, somebody mentioned the class at Lazy Days, and I think there's one Escapees offers, and there's a variety of driver training classes. They'll give you the spotter, hand signal training and stuff. We've never gone through that, and honestly, I probably look like a crow trying to take off when I'm standing back there. He doesn't really need me.
It is a little unfair. I don't need help from John other than to advise me if I'm going to hit something.
Yeah.
So I don't need help maneuvering.
He's that good. But so, I mean, I do things in the mirror where I'm trying to gauge. I don't have no idea whether he can really see me that far back,
right.
When, 43 feet away.
Right. And Debbie asked if this is an hour presentation. Debbie, I apologize. We don't have a specific time limit, but we'll hang. But we're going to move along because we've got one other big question.
Yeah, we don't have a specified time.
We're about to get to. And I like the fact that the lock said you put your hands over your eyes just before the RV hits something.
Usually it's the loud screaming and the waving of the arms. Isn't that it?
Right. So, take a look at this image that's up on the screen right now, and I'm going to ask Debbie, I'm sorry. We're going to get to defensive driving next, and I apologize. You'll need to. This will be up, of course, archived for you. So take a look at Loop B in the current slide that's up on the screen, and if I'm going to ask you all to ask yourself this question. If you were driving into Loop B, which enters, you can see the arrows, it's a one-way loop. And if you were entering on Loop B, and the campground gave you the choice of which site you wanted, anywhere in Loop B, anywhere on the first side. So that would be site 22, 23, 24, 25, all the way up through 36 or 37, that whole side. And they said to you, you can have any site you want, pick one, and you're not really comfortable yet with making life more challenging for yourself than necessary, would you choose a site on the left side, in other words, an even-numbered site, or would you choose a site on the right side, an odd-number site, to make it easier for you to do this task? So the odds, I'm going to wait and see if anybody wants to answer that one. Even side, John Shretland is correct.
Thomas says he wants site number 39 because it looks like a pull-through. I'm thinking that's true.
So the left side is right, the even side, and the reason for that is real simple.
It's like 40, Michael. Yes, you're right. You go all the way to the straight. You can back straight into that one.
There you go. So the reason it's easy is because it's on your left side. It's your strong side. If you back around a corner to the left, it's easier to do it on the left side than it is to do on the right side for all the same reasons we've been talking about. Your left side's your strong side, so that's the way to do it. And I see that Don is talking about walkie-talkies being a problem because...
his wife starts talking 2 seconds before pushing the button. Yeah.
I got that.
And Chris and Cherie are going to pull straight into site 40, so they have privacy in that side yard.
That's exactly the way to do it, Chris and Cherie. Right. That's right.
I'd have Peter back himself all the way around that loop.
Great. Now, in the case of if you were given the choice of pull-throughs and you look at Loop A and you were given the choice of taking one of those pull-throughs, sites number 1 through 11, would you rather have site, and you look at the way the arrows go and you can see how you're forced to go in there. So you can go up the entrance drive and down the middle and either split right for site 1 or left for site 2, right for site 3, left for site 4, whichever. So do you want to split left or right? So I'll give you a tip on this one. There isn't as clear an answer on this one. That's because if you were to take site number 2, 4, 6, 8, or 10, it's easier to pull into because it's on your left side. But then when you pull out, you're cutting the corner on the right side, which makes it a little more challenging to see. John Shretland, short walk to the pool. Yeah,
but site number 10.
If you don't want noise from the pool, you take site number 1 or 2. So your choice in this case is, do you want to have it be a little more challenging coming in, or a little more challenging getting out. And it's all a matter of whether you're turning left or right. And it's a constant, regardless of whether you're driving or parking, that your left side's your strong side, your right side is your weak side. And if you look at our video about mirror adjustment, you'll see we talk about that and why. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic here, because we are... Oh, one last slide.
These are the fun campgrounds.
So I want to give you a warning about this one. This is from a national park campsite. How many times have you seen in a national park campsite, it says 40-foot pull-throughs, and you think, great!
I'll have no problem getting
No
into those.
sweat. I will warn you right now that older campgrounds, and we had this our very first summer in Yellowstone. We stayed at Norris Campground, and it looked very much like this. And we
All
thought,
those teacup handle sites off the main road.
so what happens when you go into one of those little teacup-shaped sites, and you've got the little grassy area out here?
With the rock and the tree, like Kristen Cherie mentioned.
Well, let's say it's off on the right-hand side, and you pull off to the right, and it curves left, and you get in there. You're going to be curving left in the site. You're going to off-track your left side into the tree in the middle in the little island there. Same thing on the other side. So those, if you think you're in the clear because you're driving a 35-foot rig and you're going to a national park that says 40-foot pull-throughs, don't be so sure.
Yeah, I don't know what they're smoking when they make up those
Right.
links for those sites.
Right, and the locks are right. You're going to have a great stay, but that's because you're going to be there while they're repairing the bodywork.
Well,
on
no,
the
if you choose the easier one to get into but harder to get out of, at least you didn't have any trouble, so you had a great stay, so you can deal with it on your way out.
Got it. So I think that's all on that. Let's move on to another question that we got from Bill and Lynn. And so Bill and Lynn had this general question asking us to discuss situational awareness. So they talked in some detail about using scanning, because I use the term scan in the videos where I talk about driving with mirrors and how important scanning is. And they talked about it being taking into account the wind, the traffic speed, altitude, traffic density, the number of lanes, the speed limit, time of day, and how many, many other factors can affect things. So also, whether or not you are doing things you shouldn't be, like talking on the phone, or if you're looking at a nav system when you maybe should have your eyes outside. So, and they said apologies if they're preaching the obvious here. And I would say that not only are you not preaching the obvious, you've led us into the single most important topic that we are planning to make a video about. Debbie, take care. Sorry you got to run.
Yes.
Come back and watch the
archive.
archive version. Thanks for being here.
Pick up at 60 minutes and watch the rest.
Yeah. So let's talk quickly about defensive driving. We're going to wheel through. It's a very big topic. We can't cover in too much detail here, but we're going to give you some interesting basics. And you want to? I wasn't ready for that yet, but thank you. See, my tech guy over here is jumping the gun.
I'm jumping the gun. I'm
Totally
so
jumped the
excited
gun.
about the 5 keys.
Let me give you the. I'll give you the my definition that I always taught my bus driving students, that defensive driving is making up for other drivers' mistakes, with the assumption that you're also not going to make any of your own. So not making any of your own mistakes is all well and good. Making up for other people's mistakes is where defensive driving comes in, and you can put that slide up if you want. Talks about something called the Smith system. And back when I was the safety and training manager for a big metropolitan bus company, we used the Smith system that was developed back in the 50s as one of our key teaching tools. And I'm not going to go into it in tremendous detail here, but I'll give you some quick information about the basis of the Smith system, which is called the 5 keys. So there are 5 key points that they use to gather and use information to keep you safer while you're on the road. And let's go into them real quick. The first one is called aim high in steering. Is that supposed to run?
That is supposed to be running.
That's
yes.
supposed to be running, isn't it? Oh, we got a tech. My tech guy is going to be right on this. See if he can make that run. If he can't make it run, I'll just have to. Oh, there we go. So what aim high in steering means, it is about your vision. You're looking down the road into the distance as far as the eye can see, at least 15 seconds into your future. You want to look far ahead. When brake lights of the car in front of you go on, that's not when your brake lights should have gone on. Your brakes should have gone on when the car 5 or 10 cars up. You can use your height in a large vehicle to get even better advantage by looking off into the distance to see what's up ahead. So aim high in steering is their term. It's not my favorite way that they call it aim high in steering here. It's not my favorite terminology, but that's what it means. Keep your eyes up. A lot of people tend to have their eyes drift downward and look at the bumper of the car in front of them. Aim high when you're looking ahead. Second one is get the big picture. So you want to scan for hazards using every available tool. And by every available tool, of course, I mean your eyes, but you also want to use your mirrors. And when you're scanning, you're looking at your left convex and flat mirror, looking straight ahead, looking at your right convex and flat mirror, glancing at your backup camera if you have one, looking straight out the side window, scanning. Every once in a while, you'll scan your gauges to see if you've got a problem with your engine and something, if you're starting to overheat and maybe you should be looking for a safe place to pull off now. It's those sorts of pieces of information that you're bringing in. And what reject irrelevant information means is, I know while you're scanning when you're in a motorhome or a fifth wheel or a travel trailer, you're going to want to be looking at the beautiful scenery you're driving through. You need to limit that to be a good defensive driver. And while you're going to glance, reject those things that can't affect your safety. If you're driving along and there's this really cool, cityscape there with a neat skyline, it may be great to want to look at it, but it's not going to affect your safety because none of those buildings are going to have any effect on your driving. Try to use a rapid selection and rejection process in your vision where you see something, immediately realize it can't affect your safety, reject that from your scan, and continue scanning. And I recommend you scan your mirrors approximately every 5 to 8 seconds. About every 8 seconds is fine. You glance, left mirrors, look straight ahead, glance at your right mirrors, look straight ahead, and always know what's happening around you all the time.
Well, and it's more too than just looking at the mirror. It's sort of like what you talked about when you pulled up to the site to look into it and take that mental picture. So when you're looking in your mirror, you are assessing to see, oh, is there a vehicle in the lane to the left of me that is approaching, and how fast are they approaching? Are they going to get to me before I need to move into that lane to pass someone ahead of me? Same thing on the right, someone coming up an exit ramp, someone coming up along beside you. So it's mentally keeping track of where are the cars, where are they coming from, are they accelerating, all that kind of stuff. So
that's correct. So, and by the way, a lot of the footage you'll be seeing here is footage that we have shot in preparation for this. It's been a long time in the process getting this video ready. We're not there yet. So we've been grabbing road footage. And one thing that's allowed me to do is to look at my own driving. And I'm going to show you that in a minute, what you can look for in your own driving. So let's move on to the third key, which is keep your eyes moving. The way, and I mentioned that briefly already, you're going to have your eyes moving all the time. It's not uncommon for people to have what we call the fixed stare habit, where they just look straight ahead.
Right. And Thomas just said that as a newbie, I tend to be a little too focused on my lane position sometimes instead of looking more ahead.
So, yeah. And another thing that goes along with that, Thomas, is that the old adage is keep your eyes on the road. That's not actually good advice. You don't want to just keep your eyes on the road. You want to move them around. You want to look at your mirrors. You want to look at other things. You need to scan. And part of the reason you keep your eyes moving is because of the way your vision works. Only 3% of your vision is central vision, and everything outside that is peripheral vision. If you stare at something for more than a few seconds, your peripheral vision becomes less acute and less active, and you stop picking up what's happening in your peripheral vision as well. If you move your central vision around and pick up other things, it keeps your peripheral vision more active and allows you to see things better. So don't just stare straight ahead. Fourth key, leave yourself an out. This is something that's called space cushion driving. And ideally what you want to do is surround yourself with a cushion of space all the way around you as you are able to. Now that's not always possible to do. You obviously are in a traffic lane and you have a lane of traffic next to you, and you probably have a lane of traffic on the other side if you're on a multi-lane highway and you're in the center lane, especially if you've moved over to make room for people entering the highway. You will have people alongside you, but your scanning and your monitoring of your mirrors is going to keep a mental tab on who's down there. You always know when you have a car alongside you, but surround yourself with space as you can. Here's one way you can do that. If you're in a 3-lane highway, use the right lane. If you're in the center lane and someone were to cut you off and you have nowhere to go but the other direction, but if there's a car next to you in that lane, you now have nowhere to go. If you're in the right lane and someone cuts you off from the center lane, you can go onto the shoulder. Now, there's a caveat to that.
And actually, who just asked that, moving forward, asked, do you guys try and stay out of the right lane while on the highway to stay clear of the on and off ramp?
There's my caveat. Great question, Kenny and Sabrina. So the caveat to staying, I always stay in the right lane when there are no exit and entrance ramps, unless I'm passing someone, of course. When I get into an area where it's more congested, where, of course, it's more likely to be more than just 2 lanes going in the same direction, there are times when you want to stay out of the right lane. And that's when there are lots of entrance and exit ramps. Now, here's a great thing to do. The more frequent the entrance ramps are, sometimes they're every quarter or half mile in some really congested areas. When it's like that, I get in the center lane and stay there most of the time when it's congested. If they're maybe every 3/4 of a mile to a mile or more, I'll try to stay in the right lane as much as I can for the reason I already mentioned. However, when traffic is coming in, so let's say I'm in the right lane and I look and see that someone is entering the highway. I saw them earlier than anybody else on the road would have seen them, didn't I? Because I'm looking 15 seconds ahead with my high aim steering, just like you are. And as I look up in the distance, the very first thing I'm going to do, when I see a car entering the highway in the entrance lane, first thing, glance at my left 2 mirrors, both of them. The convex mirror is going to show me if there's someone alongside me. The flat mirror is going to show me if someone's approaching me. And if I see someone getting on the entrance ramp several hundred feet up ahead, because I've looked way ahead, and I glance in that mirror and there's no one there, I'm going to change lanes and make room for them to come in. If there's someone next to me, I'll evaluate the situation. How rapidly is the person on the on-ramp coming on? Are they dragging their heels and not stepping on the gas? Am I going to have a conflict with them? Is the person who's on my left going to pass me before they get there? And you've got to judge what's happening.
If I slow down a little bit, will that facilitate anything by letting the person next to me pass me?
So let's quickly talk about the most important space cushion around you of all. The one in front of you, and it's also the one you have the greatest control over.
Oh, whoops. Sorry, did I jump ahead?
Yes, you did. See,
I thought you were all excited about going to this key 5.
I'm right here. I'm not at key 5 yet. So we only have 1 key left, so this is not too hard. So 4, 6, 8, and 10 seconds is real simple. 4 seconds is the correct following distance on dry pavement during the daytime for a large vehicle. 2 seconds is, you've always heard the 2-second rule driving your car. 2-second rule is great in your car, but your car doesn't weigh 20,000 pounds or
more,
or 30,000 pounds, or like we do. We weigh 19 tons, and that's without the towed. So 4 seconds is your rule for any RV, and I don't care if you're driving a 5th wheel, travel trailer, motorhome, it doesn't make any difference. 4 seconds, and that's daytime, good road conditions, dry pavement. 6 seconds, anytime the road's wet, or whenever it's nighttime, 6 seconds should be your following distance. And I'm going to show you how to do your following distance in just a second, and we're going to test me and see if I actually practice what I preach. 8 seconds, that is when there is snow on the ground, or when you combine rain and nighttime. So at night in the rain, I automatically, without thinking, drop back to 8 seconds. If it's snowy out, I drop back to 8 seconds. If it's icy out, I'll go to 10. I hope I just said that right. So in general, these are my personal rules of thumb and what I taught drivers to do. 4 seconds for dry daylight, 6 seconds for rain or night, 8 seconds for rain and night combined or snow, 10 seconds for ice. That's my general rule. Now, I taught professional drivers that way for 10 years, that those are the rules they were to follow. So let's go on to the last key here. And have you been looking to see if anybody's been asking questions I should be answering as I go?
I figure when we get through these keys, we're going to go back. There's a few questions about some other stuff.
Great. So key 5, make sure they see you. This is where you use your turn signals, your warning flashers, your 4-way hazard flashers, your lights, your horn. Eye contact is the most important thing. You're driving along a city street and you see a bicycle. Is the bicyclist looking away from you? If they are, you might need to tap your horn to make sure they look, and you
And in a diesel pusher, they're going to go flying.
make sure there's.
That air horn's going
I
to blow
see
them
Iggy
right off.
says if it's snowing, he ain't going. I'm with you there. So you want to create eye contact, and the way you do that is by using your signals. Whether it's and one of the ways you can do that now in the every occasional situation that I will get into where I have to brake more firmly than I would like, because either someone cut in front of me or I got caught in a situation where I was a little too close and things backed down and I had to brake a little too quickly, my reflex is to instantly flip on the four-way hazard lights. I want to give the person behind me, I'm communicating with them. I'm making sure they see that I'm stopping suddenly and my four-ways go on.
Especially since we're a big behemoth blocking their ability to see what's going on in front of us.
I always do that in the car. Unfortunately, we cannot do that in this RV because the brake and turn and four-ways are one. And when I step on the brake, the four-ways don't work. I've already talked to Newmar about that, but we haven't retrofit this. But anyway, PTI, in case you know what PTI on the screen is there. Pre-trip inspection. It's a topic for a whole other day that we would have done prior to this, and we're going to do a video about that one of these days. Pre-trip inspection. What good is pushing on your horn if you never checked and it doesn't work?
Or flashing your lights or turning on your four-ways.
You turn on your turn signal and it's not working, but you don't know it. You think you're communicating with someone. You think you're making sure they see you, but you're not because you didn't do your pre-trip inspection.
So checking lights is always a key thing.
Now you can go on to the next one. So,
oops.
All right. So we're going to take a look, and we're going to let's look at some quick questions, and then we're going to show you exactly how to calculate your following distance live on the screen. So let's see if we missed anything here.
So Mark asked if we have a dash cam that we record our drive with.
We don't.
We do not.
I don't know why. I guess I know that in other countries where insurance fraud is a big deal and people throw themselves onto your hood.
They're certainly becoming very popular, and there's a ton of them out on the market. But
we've had a couple of manufacturers offer them to us to review, but we don't do reviews, and we don't use it ourselves, so we didn't.
And the Locks asked, is there any way to back up a motorhome with the four wheels down towed for a real short distance, maybe with the driver in the towed?
Okay.
So, of course, the official word is no because of the danger. It's like a shopping cart with the floppy wheels. When you're pushing the car backwards, the car has a tendency to bend.
We have backed ourselves
Being that said, yes, we have in an emergency.
About
in a straight line.
In a perfectly straight line for
about 5 feet.
About 4 or 5 feet, once or twice in 15 years, because my feeling is that the damage you could cause to the tow system or the car is just not worth it.
Yeah, it's a big danger.
You're not supposed to do it, and I do not recommend it.
Don had mentioned about liking the mirror position on our coach. On his, they're side mounted as opposed to being more forward and merging into traffic. He clipped his on a semi as the lanes were moving. That's not fun.
The fact that they stick off the side can make it tough. I used to drive through a tunnel approximately 4 to 6 times a day as part of my job for years. A very narrow tunnel. And that was in an MCI. I don't even think any... I'm going to give you a quick tip, by the way, about lane control. A lot of people say, how do I control my lane? And if you watch the video about mirrors, I showed you how to see where you are in the lane, but that doesn't tell you how to control it. Here's the answer. When you get in a narrow spot, stay left. Stay left. Run your left side along the line and don't worry about the right side. If the tractor trailer in front of you got through, you will fit as well. And you don't need to worry about the right side if you just stay left and put your tire this far from the center line or the dashed line. Stay left. That's how you keep yourself, get through a tight area without having a heart attack.
The Locks mentioned about the fact that you have to basically pay attention more because other drivers don't pay attention, and somebody else said the same thing. The greatest defense is being patient. Absolutely. So the biggest defense in defensive driving is trying to anticipate what other people may do that's wrong and being prepared by keeping that space, keeping that distance, making sure you have an out on your sides.
Some of that is looking at what their wheels are doing, which way are their wheels turned as they're about to pull out. Look what their head is doing. Look for the body language that can show you, and like if you're in a small, like a parking area or a slow-moving city street.
And Ian mentioned, so this will be exhausting. How often should you take a break?
Oh, well, that's totally up to you. I think you should take a break whenever you get tired. I have driven nonstop from Dayton, Ohio to New York City without standing up from behind the wheel. I have a bus driver's bladder and can literally, whatever the fuel tank range is, I can do it. This rig can go 1,000 miles, and we wouldn't do that in a day. But in the old days, when we need to make tracks, I can sit down behind the wheel and drive without stopping.
Right, but a lot of people are more comfortable doing 100 to 200 miles a day and doing shorter hops.
And I know that Chris and Cherie are more sensible about this and do shorter days as a general rule because they actually have common sense.
And these days, they only do, what, 10 nautical miles? It's really reduced.
So the answer is, if you feel tired or fatigued,
Either
get
take
off
a
the
break or
road.
stop, right?
The thing that's easier for me, where I do have an unfair advantage, all the things I'm now talking about, I don't think about while I'm driving. I just do them.
Yeah, it's automatic.
And the things we're going to show you in the next video clip coming up in just a moment, we're going to show you something that I wasn't paying any attention at all to what we were doing. We had the camera running for about an hour just to get highway footage. I paid no attention, and it was interesting for me to watch back to see. I could see the speedometer in some of them to see how fast I was going. I could see the following distance. I could see my head checking mirrors in some cases. And I watched to see, am I really scanning my mirrors every 5 to 8 seconds? Am I really following 4 seconds back or more if it's raining? Mm-hmm. And it was an interesting thing for me. You can do the same thing.
Thomas mentioned that he finds that he prefers to use his mirrors versus his side view cameras. And do you have any tips on when they are useful?
We don't have side view cameras, but I always recommend using every tool at your disposal. And it's for you to determine which you're more comfortable with.
If you're more comfortable with the mirrors, then the side cameras are just an augmentation to that if you can't see something in the mirror.
Here's the balance you want to find, Thomas. Don't totally give up using your side view cameras because you're like, I don't like those. But don't become so obsessed with including them in your scan that you now have that many additional items to scan. It can get to be too much. Side view mirror, convex, flat, straight ahead, right mirror, side view, flat, and it's
camera.
It's a lot.
Backup camera.
It's a lot.
Scenery.
So if you feel in practice that it adds to your situation, great. Or if you find that the field of view in it is so good that it's seeing things that your convex mirror can't see, and you can do that by having someone walk around outside next to there, and if like their feet disappear from the convex mirror and you can still see it in the side view camera, that might be an argument for using the side view camera more often because it's got a bigger field of view, preventing someone from hiding down there when the convex might allow that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Iggy mentioned a mid-trip inspection. So, yes, it doesn't hurt if you stop for lunch midway on your trip to do that same inspection again. Check your lights, check your tow bar, check everything. So there's even a story, our friends Nina and Paul from Wheeling It were on a ferry, and they believe that someone on the ferry may have actually tampered with their tow bar, the locking pin on their tow bar, and they ended up having an incident where the tow bar came undone and swung into the back of the RV. So, yes, absolutely, in situations like that, double-checking those kinds of things. It's easy to think, oh, I got it set up when I left, but things do change. So, absolutely, mid-trip inspections are helpful.
And I see one quick note from Hans who said one of the greatest defenses is being patient. Hans, I'm going to give you my primary question that I ask when it comes to passing another vehicle. And I know in RVs we don't normally do that, but if you're in a car, I would always ask students, when you're preparing to pass another vehicle, what is the first question you should ask in preparation for passing? And almost nobody got what I consider to be the correct answer to that question. The correct answer is this pass really necessary? What are you going to gain? Are you turning off in a mile? How much slower are they going than you want to travel? Patience is important, so your point is well taken.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, any others?
Yeah, Ian just asked, he said, you haven't really talked about how having a towed may or may not impact any of the advice you've given so far. So having a towed car towed behind.
So the towed isn't that much of a factor, surprisingly. Now, here, it may become a factor if you're towing a large vehicle in proportion to the vehicle doing the towing. So if you have, like we do, we have a 43-foot motorhome that weighs 19 tons, towing a 3,500-pound car. If I turn off the backup camera, I'd never know the thing is back there. You can't even tell, and it doesn't affect us in any way. Change that equation and take a 38-foot gas rig that can manage to tow 5,000 pounds and put a Jeep Grand Cherokee behind it. It's going to change the equation. When it comes to the actual maneuvering, There's not a big difference because the Toad will almost perfectly track behind the rear wheels. So when it comes to off-tracking, it's not going to have a big effect. It's going to be very minimal. The biggest difference is going to be braking distance can be increased. And that's why you have to have a brake system on your car. Because the brake system is going to apply the brakes on your Toad at the same time that the brakes are applying in the rig, theoretically doing the braking for the car. But,
so it's not adding to the equation.
Right.
And of course, obviously, you also have to account for that. Somebody mentioned as you're passing to count 10 seconds after passing them. I think that was in reference to that kind of thing, although it could have been this conversation about honking when you're behind a police car. So obviously having a towed car behind you means you have to be extra aware of that when you're pulling back into a space in front of a car after you pass someone.
Is that Cherie saying you should do your horn check behind a cop?
Yeah, right.
Is that Chris or Cherie or both of you? I'm not taking any lessons from you.
So I think. Oh, and of course, Tom has mentioned that the devil lives on the right side of the RV.
Great.
Yes.
So, all right. So let's show you right now exactly. A lot of people say, well, should I stay? You know, the old way people would calculate following distance to say you should be so many feet for so many miles an hour and stuff like that. That is all baloney. It doesn't work. Don't do it. Here is how you calculate.
You've heard it here, folks.
Here is exactly how you calculate your following distance. Watch closely. Okay, so what we're doing here is we are driving along and we're following a vehicle in front of us at a certain distance. You see that vehicle in the lane up ahead of us? And when he passes something that we can determine about where he is, like say an overpass, right at the moment that he gets to the overpass, as he goes into it.
Into the shadow in this case.
He is now going into the shadow of the overpass, and we are going to start a clock when we start rolling again and see how long it takes us to get to the overpass. Let's see.
Anyone care to guess?
Okay, and boom, we're at the overpass. We were following 4 seconds right behind him. And we found this footage in about an hour-long piece of footage where I naturally fall in at 4 seconds. It's my natural thing. I don't have to count.
If I didn't know any better, I would swear he's a robot.
I very rarely find myself tailgating because it's a thing for me. And by the way, did you see the wipers just went on the rig? We just got a little drizzle. Let's go to the next one. Go to the next one here. Now we're going to show you how you do the correct distance when it's raining, which, what did I say before? 6 seconds minimum. So there's a tractor trailer in front of us. Watch here. He's going to get to the overpass and we freeze it.
See the shadow on
See
him?
the shadow on that truck right there. He just went under that overpass. And you could use a sign or an overpass or whatever. But as we start to move, we're going to start the clock and count up and see when 6 seconds hits if we've reached the overpass yet. And here we go. How we doing? How we doing? Oh, hey, we're still about a good second and a half from the overpass. It means I was following that guy about 7.5 seconds behind. So that is the correct distance, and that's how you do it. I see John Shretland knows we were on I-5.
Right near Bellingham, yes.
Yeah, we've been up and down I-5 about a gazillion times, so a lot of our footage is in the area, and it does cooperate in rain. Right, let's talk about nights. We mentioned that driving at night, it's the same thing. We want to follow 6 seconds back. And if it were raining at night, 8 seconds back. And it's a little harder to calculate the following distance at night because it's hard to see when the person in front of you passes a sign or overpass. Sometimes you can use a street light. It's more difficult. So you know what you do? Just stay further back. If you're not sure, you're too close. Okay? So what have we got here? Any questions about that?
Yeah, and the Locks mentioned that was a great way to figure this out, but that it is hard to see the shadow. And part of that, honestly, is the video. In real life, it's usually a little easier to tell.
Actually kind of easy. And you can watch them pass, whether like an you can sometimes see the expansion joints when they're really bad in the highway, or you can watch them pass a marker on the side.
Or an intersection.
Or an intersection, or an overhead sign.
Right. Overpasses
are the easiest. But trust me, it only looked difficult in the video because it's far away. Yep. So, okay. So, let's look at one other thing here.
Cherie said, easier, never drive at night.
Thank you very much.
Which is also another advantage to being in the leisurely, self-employed and or retired zone.
And we do avoid driving at night very often just because it's an unnecessary extra amount of work. And someone asked before how long we drive. I will drive less at night because I will become fatigued more at night because the eye strain and the lights in the mirrors, you end up leaning forward to get lights out of your eyes from the mirrors or readjusting them a little.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a nuisance. So before you click to this one,
yes,
we're going to give you a little tip about what I call high alert mode. Okay, so, and this is a lot of people would ask me as someone who is training professionals to drive motor coaches, how I really know what they're looking at and if they're doing the right thing. You can see everything another driver is doing. And one of the things you can see is their hands and their feet and what they're doing with them. Is their foot on the accelerator? Is it on the brake? Where are their hands on the steering wheel? What are they doing with them? So I'm going to tell you 2 techniques that you should be practicing to make yourself a better defensive driver, to be prepared to react, and to be prepared to communicate with other drivers. And the first one is to cover the horn. And let's watch this video right here. So I'm driving along, and you see that
off
to the right-hand side, there are 2 entrance lanes coming up along our right. And I want you to watch my right hand, specifically my right thumb, and what I do with it. And again, I didn't stage this for this video. What I'm doing there, my thumb is now on the horn. I've covered the horn, and I'm ready to honk it if these people come up and don't see me. And there's a real likelihood of that because there were 2 lanes side by side, and the person in the far right lane could have changed lanes into the person next to me and driven them into me. So I'm there. I also check my left mirror to know if I have a way out, and I can see right now there are cars there. I don't. So I am ready to honk that horn if I need, and watch my thumb here and see how long I keep it on the horn here. There, I've taken it away. Again, I didn't stage that footage. That was taken from over an hour of driving, and it was interesting for me to watch myself back to see if I were to do the things I was supposed to be doing subconsciously.
Testing himself.
Cover your horn and also cover your brake. If you see that you're driving along a street, and we're going to show you another scene here. Let's show you right now. Oh, before we go to that one, don't go to that one yet. We're going to show you one last scene here. And that is driving down a city street. So let's imagine if we're driving down a city street where I don't want that yet. See, my tech man here is jumping the gun. I'm not ready. So I have to explain what we're going to do here. So we're driving down a city street. People getting in and out of their cars, maybe. Bicycles, pedestrians, cross traffic, all those things happening in a low-speed environment. I will cover my horn, and I think in this clip I couldn't see my hand on the horn, but now you know what I'm referring to when I say cover the horn. And also, covering the brake doesn't mean stepping on the brake. It means taking your foot off the accelerator and resting it over the brake pedal. And when you see someone coming down a driveway or a side street or a kid playing, you know that a ball that goes into the street is always going to be followed by a child.
Or a dog.
Or a dog. So when you see something that means you may need to brake, put your thumb on the horn, put your foot over the brake. Cover the horn, cover the brake. And what you've just done by putting your foot over the brake is cut a half a second off your reaction time, because the time it takes to release the accelerator and move your foot to the left takes about a half a second, and it's another quarter second to step on the brake, because most people have a 3/4 second reaction time. Cut 2/3 of that off by covering the brake. And then if someone comes into the street, you can instantly stab the brake and stop right now. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and watch this scene. And don't click it yet. And
let's go ahead and watch this scene.
It was my fault. We're going to do something called commentary driving. And commentary driving is what I would have drivers do when they were getting close to graduating from my class and going out on the road on their own. And it's a way I would ask the driver, I want you to describe everything you're seeing while you're driving. Tell me everything. What's a threat? What are you doing about it as you're driving? And that would do a couple of things. Not only would I know that they're seeing the things I'm seeing and they are processing them the right way, but it would tax their ability to think through them and talk about them while actually doing them. And I'd know that a driver was being overwhelmed with too much information when they stopped commentary driving because it was too much for them and they had to just pay attention to what was happening. If they could commentary drive through a complex situation, I knew they were ready to go out on their own. So let's do that now as we go around a corner, make a left turn, and go down a little city street here through a small neighborhood, and I'm going to tell you the things I see as we're turning. And I come up, and I'm going to be looking for possible conflicts with our vehicle as I'm driving. Where are there pedestrians? Where are there bicycles? Am I seeing someone who just got into their car and could open their door into me?
Or pull out of their space.
Or pull out of their space. Obviously, you saw that guy run across the street up there. I saw that way in advance. I still see them running along, and maybe they're going to run back in the street because they just ran across the street once. I see cars up ahead. Are there brake lights on where someone could be getting out of the car? It's hard for me to see that.
It's small on the screen.
Now, I'm driving a narrow street. I'm off to the left, hugging the left line to keep myself as far away from parked cars as possible to give myself that space cushion I want. I see people getting into a car here. The door could open on that pickup truck. Am I ready for it? Am I hugging that line and staying left? More pedestrians in the street. Processing everything I'm seeing. My thumb is over the horn the entire time I'm driving down this street, watching for signs of life in any car. Cross traffic.
Car door open.
Car door open. Cross traffic. Car now waiting to come through. Does he see me? How close is he?
Is he beginning to move?
Is he starting to move? Is he making eye contact? Does he see me? And now it becomes a little easier as I come out of this neighborhood where I don't have so many potential conflicts. And now it's much easier again because I don't have side streets, pedestrians, parked cars. And as you can think those things through and process them all going and say them all at the same time and challenge yourself to commentary drive, you will find out just how able you are to handle that much stuff. And the less you're able to handle easily, the slower you should be going. Okay?
Excellent.
So that's what commentary driving is.
I think we had a couple of comments. Yeah, Hans said, I don't recall what they used to call it, but it was about focusing on the white lines too much at night. Highway hypnosis, I think, is common. I don't know if that was specifically at night. But
they also call that white line fever.
White line fever, yeah. It's very dangerous. You get fixated, and that's generally a sign that you're tired.
And at night is certainly a time to get off the road when you're starting to show those signs and you need to recognize them.
Yeah. Running with the Lions asked in your behind the scenes, it would be neat to see how you're mixing live and recorded video.
Well, I don't want to be nasty and say that somebody needs to be the higher level. I forget what level patrons get behind the scenes, but maybe we'll drop it down a level at some point. We're going to show this whole setup here as soon as we're done here. It's hysterical. It's taken us almost 3 days to set up all these slides and stuff and get ready. By the way, I want to mention that while we are stationary here and we have high-speed internet and time and doing all this, we've set up all this stuff. I apologize if in the future our live broadcasts are just
simpler.
Us sitting here talking to the camera.
It will happen.
It will happen, but we'll try to avoid it.
And Greg Miller mentioned, because Shereen Chris had mentioned that their headlights don't work very well, which is why they avoid driving at night. And so Greg said he had the same problem, which is why he changed them out to LEDs. Wow, what a difference.
Greg, our headlights, LED headlights that we got from Steve at M4 are ridiculously good. I mean,
it made such a difference.
We hated driving the RV at night before, and
it was
now
dangerous.
It was dangerous. And we put those LEDs in. Holy moly, it's unbelievable. And some people have said, oh, you're not supposed to put LEDs in there. They're designed for incandescence. No one has ever flashed us thinking our high beams were on. We've never blinded anybody. It's got a good sharp cutoff and a fantastic light.
Yeah, and actually, if you are concerned about that, on most situations, you can actually upgrade the whole housing to a projector beam that then would work absolutely correctly with an LED light bulb. So
as a matter of fact,
it's just an expensive proposition if you don't have to.
We did have HIDs that we put in our car a few years ago, and that's the last video you saw about headlight upgrade on our car. We have not reported on this yet, but we've been testing M4 LED headlights for almost a year.
Yeah.
We haven't made the video yet. That video will be coming out within the next couple of months that we also upgraded our car to M4 LED headlights, so look for that one too.
Big help.
Okay.
So
laser beams, that's the way to go.
Yeah. Especially if you could use them to destroy the cars that pull in right in front of you in traffic.
Did Chris or Cherie ever come clean as to which one of them is out there snarking at us?
They are not. I think it's teamwork.
We're blaming both of you.
It's definitely teamwork.
Okay. Good. And a good comment from the Locks. You've shortened your reaction time by doing that. I assume you mean covering the brake. Very good. All right. So, to finish up, first off, we forgot the giveaway. Let's do it now. I'm so sorry. The good news is
You don't have to
that
be
you
here.
don't have to be present. Just so you know, anyone who left before now, or if they weren't here at all, you do not have to be present to win. And if you're watching this back, yeah, they're tag teaming us. If you're watching us back on the replay, on the archive version, which is going to stay available exclusively to Patreon supporters, you can watch this. And just so you know that every single patron as of today has been automatically entered to win. And you don't have to be here now if they're not here, but maybe with a little luck it'll be here. So first we got to show you the prize. Don't show that yet. Yeah, he's about to get. He's about to jump the gun with the technology.
I'm 2 steps ahead. I'm not a very good engineer.
He's about to jump the gun with the technology to show who the winner is. They don't even know what they're winning yet.
I'm all excited about that.
And
oh, Sal said I had to create a channel to talk to you. Thanks for answering my question.
Oh, great.
No, thank you for posting the question, Sal.
Thanks, Sal.
That was a really good one.
And by the way, you can see the importance of the people who post questions in advance. It allowed us to put all these things together.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
And
any tips on playlists to better focus on safe driving?
not classical.
No.
If you've seen our Instagram page, we're big classical music fans, but we like a lot of other stuff. We turn on the rock for that.
Yeah, something a little more upbeat.
Open the window and eat sweets. And we happen to be on at the same time as the RV Show USA. Well, listen, we have to look to see who's going to get the bigger ratings. You know, the Nielsen's will be, the overnights will be out anytime. And could be worse. The winds could have been double teaming us as well. No, Nikki and Jason are so off the grid.
Yeah,
okay,
we're
so
taking advantage of them.
We apologize. We really planned this to go about an hour, knowing that we'd stay as long as you wanted. I feel like we've been staying as long as we wanted, so I apologize. Here is the prize.
Yes, I would do a drum roll, but it would come out really loud.
Don't do a drum roll. Here's the prize. And I'm going to apologize in advance if those of you who've been following us for a while already bought one of these. But if you did and you win, you can give it to a friend.
It's a great gift item.
And that would be a Levelmate Pro. So those of you who have not seen the Levelmate Pro videos left, we promote this not because the company paid us to make videos for them, because they don't. We promote it because it is the coolest thing since sliced bread.
We love ours.
And if you have one already and you win this, I hope you'll pass it on to another friend. You can use this on a motorhome, travel trailer, or a fifth wheel. One quick caveat. This was sent to us before the latest model came out. It doesn't have the on-off switch on the bottom. However, this is the Series 1. And we've had it laying around here all this time. But don't worry, it doesn't make any difference. The reason they put the on-off switch in is because so many people... Yeah, not...
What? You don't want to make sure the boat is level,
Listen, Sheree, you cannot use this on your boat.
We're going to affix it to you guys to make sure you're level.
Would you block them from the room, please? So...
They're like the comedy team.
The only thing is, without the on-off switch, you just want to set the settings in it to go off after an hour of inactivity to save the battery.
In the setup process on the app, there's now a configuration option for setting the time before it goes to sleep.
So nobody knew in advance what this was going to be. This is not like our usual prizes where they get shipped out from the manufacturer. The one I'm holding in my hand, we are going to mail it ourselves. I hope the winner's in Canada at the moment to save us on postage, but somehow I doubt that. We're going to send it directly from us to you. And here's how we're going to pick the winner. Oh.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. List item will appear.
So we're going to do this in a very high-tech way, and if you drop that, I'm going to kill you. So the way this works is this is a program we got called...
Handy Randy.
Handy Randy will automatically pick the winner out of all of your names have been entered in here in advance, and when John shakes that, we are all going to find out the winner simultaneously. So, let's do it. Hey!
Moving Forward Adventures.
Kenny and Sabrina won it. And are you still here? They are.
Oh,
there they are.
That's great.
They're not answering yet. There's a little delay here. Hey, congratulations, Kenny and Sabrina. I hope I didn't just blow out the microphone screaming like that. So Kenny and awesome, right?
We'll be in touch.
We'll be in touch. We'll send this to you. But Kenny and Sabrina, can you tell us if you already bought one of these or not? If this is a duplicate, because it's no problem, because you can give it away or sell it, whatever you want to do with it. We won't give it to anybody else.
Maybe it'll be like a white elephant gift. They can give it away.
They leave for Canada tomorrow.
Oh, really?
So if you got one of these, John likes the way we did the draw. They're not going to admit if they have. They might have bought one already.
They don't
They
have
don't
one.
have it.
Excellent.
So
Hooray.
here's the question, Kenny and Sabrina. You're leaving from Canada tomorrow. From where? And where are you going in Canada?
Oh, Bill said you'll love it.
Yeah, you. Oh, hey, Bill.
Hey, Bill. Hi, Bill.
Bill, have you guys been here the whole
been
time?
lurking the whole time.
You've been
haven't you?
lurking, haven't you?
Either that or we just woke him up.
Yeah, it's
They're
past
clapping.
it's past your bedtime on the East Coast.
And actually,
So-
for anybody who's still here, if you still have questions about driving, we're still paying attention, so keep them coming.
Erie, PA to Toronto. How soon do you cross? All right, don't worry about it. We'll send it to you wherever you
Yeah,
want.
exactly.
We have your email address, so
We'll email you.
We'll email you or call you or FaceTime or something, and we'll get it off to you. Chris and Cherie, you guys are awesome.
Oh, that is not
Awesome.
true. You
That
guys
is not
do
true.
awesome live streams.
And we got to show you one other thing because we didn't do it. So real quick before we go, and I apologize, we've been going an hour and a half here. Does anybody have any other questions? Because we were supposed to answer questions live here.
Yes, it looks like John says, I once had to do a sharp 180-degree turn. The turn was too tight to make without backing up once or twice. What is the best procedure for this maneuver?
I'm going to show you what I have, a term I have coined. This, and any of you late people who are still staying here are going to see something that I invented. Now, I don't know if I invented doing it, but I invented the name, and you're going to get ideas from what I'm about to show you. This is not officially sanctioned, but it's a way to get into a spot that you physically cannot fit in and to defy the laws of physics. I'm going to teach you right now how to defy the laws of physics. Okay? So, we're going to, and part of the reason we're going to do this is to show you.
No, we had a whole nother camera set up.
All right, so let's get we have a whole other camera set up here. We haven't even shown you all our toys yet. I'm ready. Go ahead. So you now are looking at a live shot of our table here. How do you like that?
Isn't that a lovely tablecloth?
Isn't that great?
It's great.
So now we are going to show you what we have prepared here to demonstrate exactly what we're talking about. All right, let's get this into position here. All right, so we now have an intersection, and we have an RV that's going to drive into that intersection. Oh, the driver's drunk. Okay, so here let's come in from this side. Let's come in from over here. Hold on. Come in from over here.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it like that. All right. If anybody's laughing, stop it. Okay. You know what? I just want to make sure this is gonna look the best on camera. Here we go. Here we go. This will work.
So are you doing John's 180 or are you doing?
No, I'm not going to do John's 180, but John, my tip about doing your 180 is you're going to get ideas from what I'm about to show you, okay? So, I'm going to show you what you do if you want to make a right turn down this street like this and go down this street, okay? So, here's how you normally do that. You're normally going to make what I always taught was a square turn, right? And usually the lanes are wider, but in this case, we're making it really, really tough. We're making this as tough as we can because we wanted to demonstrate what you do when things are super tight. So what you'd normally do in this case, of course, you'd hug way against the line over here. You always want to stay a little wide and maybe even a little over the line if you've got the opportunity to do it. And of course, what you want to do is you want to... Give me a pen, will you? Mm-hmm. Thanks. What you want to do is you want to be looking in your right mirror down the right side to make sure nobody's trying to sneak up your right side when you're going to make your turn, because you've got to stay as far as you can away from the curb to make the turn.
And that's a tempting opening for another
And that
car.
means you've got to watch both mirrors for like cars, bikes, pedestrians coming up the right. That goes without saying. And what we're going to do to make a square turn is pull straight out into the intersection, and then rolling slowly as you crank the wheel all the way, because again, we don't want to damage our tires or strain our steering system. We slowly roll forward like this, and we get those rear wheels to hook around that corner, and this is our off tracking over here on this side, just like you all saw when you watched the video, right? And we make our turn. Now, but notice something. Our nose had to go way across the oncoming lane to do that. So what if there were, I got more visual aids here, watch this. What if there were a car waiting in that lane at the light? How do I get through there?
Hit him.
The car,
I'm bigger.
by the way, that's my yellow Lamborghini Fantasy car, if anybody wants to know that. So what we're going to do is we are going to stay a little wider. And if this is a really wide lane over here, and you can stay a little across the line, if it's safe to do that, you can kind of hang against that line a little bit. Something else you can do is if you come up to the light and it's green and you can just make the turn, you can pull way wide and you can make your turn from out here. Now, you've got to be extra careful doing this.
Obviously, oncoming traffic or traffic that would be making a right turn from this lane.
You've got a lot of things to watch for here, but you're going to open up your right side here. This is why your mirror is so important and why communicating with other drivers is so important. Keep your right-hand turn signal on to let people know you're going to be turning right, but be cognizant that people may ignore it and come up anyway, and don't go any wider than you need to. So now, when you've come wide, that allows you not to pull as far into the intersection, and you can many times make the turn. Now, I've drawn it here so tight, it's still very difficult. You'd really have to be way over here, which is kind of far. The next option is to do what's called backing the car up. And as you pull in here, you kind of pull up here.
You will see the whites of their eyes.
You will see the whites of their eyes as this car will back up, and you need to look and see, is there somebody back here who cannot, who isn't backing up? Are people helping and cooperating? This car is going to back up.
And make the room for it.
And you're going to make the room you need, and they'll back up as far as they need. And I will tell you, 9 out of 10 times, people will back out of your way. So let's suppose you were in a situation where this car was broken down, and let's pretend there's no other way to get out of here. I'm going to just throw a hypothetical out here, that these roads here are blocked off. You have to make this right turn, and this car has had an accident with another big car, and they're cracked up in the intersection, and they can't move.
Wow.
I'm winging it here. And they can't go anywhere, and there are no streets here. This is a right turn, and you have got to make that turn, and you cannot make that turn, and you could stay out here, and you cannot make that turn because they're in the way. I'm going to show you how to do something that I call the two-shot. It's a Ferrari and the Lamborghini. That's right. So here is how you can get down a turn that is a physical impossibility for you to get through here, okay? It is physically impossible for you to get through here because when you get to this point here, I'm going to just make this a little different. You're right about here. You cannot get through because you are going to off track into the light pole right here on the corner. It's a physical impossibility. You have to back all the way down the street to get out of there, right?
Which with your towed car, you can't do.
You are going to make something that I call the two-shot turn.
Oh, and actually, this two-shot turn occurs without a towed vehicle attached.
This cannot be done with a vehicle behind you.
No tow car behind you.
So thank you for mentioning that. It can't be done with anybody behind you. To get through here, you're going to get your... This is a way to get out of... to extricate yourself from a situation in which you are trapped. You are trapped. You have no way out. These streets are blocked off. You can't back up because it's a mile down the road. You're done for. You can't get out. And you physically can't fit through here because the street's so narrow. You're going to do what's called a two-shot turn. This, again, is unofficial, and I'm giving you a little tip here that can give you some food for thought in the future on how to get into your driveway at your house, even though it's too narrow to make the turn. Okay, here's how you do it. You're going to stay as far left as you can. And you're going to pull so far forward that you can't possibly make the turn. You're purposely going to overshoot the turn.
And the reason is?
The reason is, think back to what we talked about before.
Your rear wheels.
Your rear wheels cannot turn, and it's the rear wheels that can't get around this corner. So you're purposely going to misposition the front wheels to where they can't get, the front end can't make the turn. This is what's about to happen. You're going to go around here, and you're going to nose up like this. And you cannot get around the turn because your front wheels can't turn. But now you're going to crank your wheels back to the left. You're going to back up, repositioning the front, and now you're going to finish your turn. That's what I call the two-shot turn. You're going to take advantage of the fact that your front wheels turn, and therefore you can readjust the front of your RV side to side and reposition it. But the rear wheels, once you go around this turn here, you are finished. You can maneuver back and forth all you want, and I've watched people back up 5 and 10 times trying to get through a narrow little entranceway, you cannot do it. You've got to overshoot the turn, back up, reposition with the front.
Now I'm going to go with Sheree and Chris's comment and combine them, actually. A cargo helicopter with laser beams would be really handy.
That would be good. So what I just told
Or
you...
moving to a cul-de-sac.
What I just told you is completely off the record. It's an idea for how to get yourself out of a situation you're trapped in. But I'm going to tell you when you're going to use that in real life. This was kind of a concocted situation here. I'll tell you when... Yeah, what if you're towing, you can't back up? Don, you've got to disconnect in this case.
Yeah.
This is a situation where you are trapped. And I will tell you this. If you're trapped in a situation where your choice is to hit something or stop and get out and disconnect and talk to other drivers, get out and disconnect and talk to other drivers and ask for their help. And yes, John, you can do a 3-shot turn. Use this information to get a feeling. The lesson to be learned from this little tip is that the front of the rig can be readjusted from side to side laterally by turning the wheel and going forward and backward. The rear of the rig cannot. So any maneuver you're going to do, and when you're going to do this in real life, is when you come up to your driveway at your house and you want to pull straight down it. Now, the advice I would give you is don't do that. Back in. But if for some reason you want to take your time, yeah, I see Bill has done that maneuver in campgrounds. Bill, got to remind me, did I teach you that or did you come up with that?
Bill's a sharp guy, but he came up with that.
By the way, William...
He's trademarking it
I'm going to
fast.
tell you, I'm going to out you right here.
No, no.
No? I can't tell that?
No.
Bill, tell me if I can out you as to who you are here, and I will. If not, I won't. So, if you want to get into your driveway, and the driveway, all on your own, good for you,
Go Bill.
If your driveway is only 6 inches narrower than your rig, you've got to have the rig.
6 inches wider. If it's 6 inches narrower, you're not going
Yeah,
in.
you can't defy the laws of physics like that.
No.
If your rig is 6 inches narrower or a foot narrower than your driveway, think about it. You've got to have your rig very, very straight with what you're going down before you can get in. You can't be in the turn. Most of your turn has to be completed prior to going down. That's where the 2-shot turn comes in. See, Joy Litchfield got trapped. Oh, Bill says I can out him. Okay,
right.
So I'm going to out William McGowan, who's here.
If you see him in the chat again.
So anytime you hear us talk about why we started RV Geeks videos in the first place, not our website design company, but why we started making videos, it's because we invited...
Bill made us do it.
We invited Bill and Mark on a 10-day trip with us in southern Utah, and they fell in love with RVing. And Bill, you can back me up on this one, that the first motorhome that Bill spent time behind the wheel of was this one, ours, because I made him get behind the wheel and drive it for, what, about 400 of our 800-mile trip. I couldn't get him out behind the wheel after that. So...
When they bought their RV, their current RV...
They bought their RV, and they had some questions, and so we started answering them by making videos to help them do it. So Bill and Mark are the reason that RV Geeks exists on YouTube. So thanks for being here, Bill. So does anybody have...
You taught me well, Master. I don't know.
Yes.
I think you had some innate abilities of your own
Bill. I think, Grasshopper, you have done very well.
Yes.
So I apologize for everyone who thought this would be over in an hour, and now it's an hour 45. Does anybody have any last questions, or should we let you all go? Should we not do this again because it took so long? You're sick of it. I know it's late on the East Coast.
I can't believe anybody's still here.
I have no idea how many people are here, but thank you so much for joining us.
He's losing his
perfect
voice.
Timing. The voice is going.
Thanks so much, Sal. We appreciate that. Thanks for all the time and effort you put into this.
As a matter of fact, Mark, I see 8410 Mark there. Did we train Bill to buy a Newmar? Bill, you should answer that. I think Bill and Mark bought a Newmar Country Star because they were on this rig and liked it. Is that true? And somehow they knew that we could answer a lot of questions about it.
It didn't hurt. The systems are very similar.
It didn't hurt. And those of you who saw us take a picture in front of a New Air recently on Instagram, we do love Newmar very much. And
yes.
if we were to get another rig, it would almost certainly be a Newmar, or we'd look at it. So, guys, we're going to call it quits there. And
Before Peter completely loses his voice.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I did more of the talking than John here. As you know, this was kind of...
This is his area of expertise.
This is my area. When you guys want to talk about tech, John is going to take the whole thing. And I'll
Unless it has to do with being the engineer on a live video show, and I tend to jump the gun.
Thanks so much, guys. And Sheree and Chris, I hope we haven't exceeded expectations enough so much that you're going to be bored next time we just sit here and talk.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you very much. And we're going to show you our, right after this, we're going to do our
behind the
live.
scenes.
And those of you who get to see the behind the scenes videos, not to be a tease here, you'll see them. And if you ever do up your level later on, it'll always be archived. All the live videos, I think they're for, I think it's for the Live Long and Prosper patrons and I. Or,
Well, I got to find the camera.
yeah, there's the camera. Got to do that. Live Long and Prosper and all that. So thank you all so much.
Yes,
We're going to
thanks,
call it a
guys.
night. We love you all. We consider you all our friends. And this was
Travel safe.
so much more fun than last time. And Kenny and Sabrina, we will be in touch. Congratulations again.
That's right.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.